The presenting sponsor for On Education is Schoology. Every day, millions of students, parents, faculty, and administrators from more than 1,600 school districts leverage Schoology to advance what is possible in education. The team at Schoology is passionate about making its users successful, and they know sometimes you might need a little help to achieve your desired outcomes. To help districts find their way to success, Schoology has created Schoology Compass, a set of self-service resources and tools to support school and district leaders in their journey to success. Compass is made up of 5 district success routes. Each one is designed to advance what is possible at your district. To learn more about Schoology Compass, simply visit Schoology.com.
You can only sit on $1 trillion in the bank for so long, boys.
Yeah, you can invest that in education.
Welcome to On Education. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss the upcoming elections, the Apple event that happened last week, news about teacher gaming, and our guest this week is Josh Parker from Unbound Ed.
Hopefully we make it through the podcast without
technical difficulties.
Boy, oh boy. So, if you are a regular listener, you'll notice we didn't come out with a podcast last week. Sorry. We're having trouble. Not big trouble, just, minor troubles. Anyways, we think we've got it all figured out. But we've definitely had to move around some interviews and stuff like that. So we're excited. We've actually, this interview with Josh we did last week. And we've been able to salvage it out of our technical issues. And I think we're going to get it out to you because it was very, very good.
Yes.
So we're trying to do better. We're thinking about things and trying to figure out what's going on with some issues. We played around with some stuff just a few minutes ago before we went on air, and this is the way it goes, I guess, when you're trying to run a studio quality podcast from a third bedroom in your house.
From the basement in my house.
or the basement. Or a basement in Minnesota.
We're like troubleshooting all kinds of things. Is it our internet? Is it the routers? Is it our computers?
Hey, newsflash, I'm not an engineer.
Is it our microphones?
God, I hope not. My microphone was very expensive.
Yes, what is it? So hopefully we got it. I think it just shows though it's difficult to do. We have it all down and then all of a sudden it doesn't work.
It's funny.
It's like tech in general.
Do you remember when we were interviewed by Dylan and we were talking about like how easy it was? And it's easy to do it kind of at a low level, at like a basic level where you have no expectations and stuff like that. But doing it the way that we want to do it is not easy. And so that's what makes it fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Except it hasn't been fun and I'm really cranky about it all. So
makes it frustrating, but then also rewarding. Rewarding when it turns out okay.
Sure. So we got lots to talk about.
Yes.
Let's okay.
How do we even set this up?
I don't know how to set this up. I really don't. This Idaho teachers thing, I don't really want to talk. I think if I talk about it too much, I'm going to end up swearing, and then I'm going to end up having to change the rating.
Then we might have to. Yeah, that would be interesting. You'd have to beep it out, or you would have to change the rating of the podcast. Would that get us more listeners or less listeners?
I don't know, man. I've been wondering, to be honest. But I think people who know us know that neither of us have a problem with saying things the way we want to say them when we need to say them. But
sure.
Trying to be professional for this is a little bit more difficult when it comes to people dressing up as Mexicans and then putting up a fake wall in your library,
putting it on social media.
Like,
yes.
Talk about taking idiocy and racism to the max. I can't even. I really can't even. I'm just losing it. Boy, oh boy. Yeah. Like, I don't even know what to say. I guess my one of my real thoughts on this is we're better than this, people. Like, as educators, at least
way better. Yes.
We should be.
Yes.
And
go ahead, Mike.
And like I guarantee you there were kids, minorities, Latinos that go to that school and now and see that, and it's not a joke to them. It's not funny. It's not fun. It's terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah.
You guys live down there in a state like some of these Latino communities live in a state of constant fear. And you just ramped up some 5-year-old's fear to like epic levels because now their teacher is against them too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I thought that not only that, but, I saw some, they were putting like, these specific schools have a certain percentage of Hispanic, Latino students, right?
Right.
But I thought even the broader picture, you just showed everybody in the school, by all of the students, that this is okay to do. So now you're talking about, okay, not just that 15% that you just crushed them, but what about that other 85% that you just empowered this kind of hate, this just disgusting kind of rhetoric,
Yep.
and made fun of it, kind of like, oh yeah, look at us, kind of doing that. And then, I mean, this is a thought process too, Mike. It's not like when we're, if we're just talking and then sometimes we might say something where like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, where it just came off the top of your head and you slipped and you're like, I shouldn't have said that. That's right. That was inappropriate. I apologize. Cause it's something that happens, but this is a well thought out, it's like a planned thing. And then you have a group of people doing it within the school, a group of teachers doing it. And then even so well thought out that you decided to go ahead and take pictures and post them.
At so many times in this process, someone could have said, guys, this is probably not a good idea.
This doesn't feel right. Something about this is not. Maybe we should rethink this.
Right.
It's just sick,
like
man.
It's like when you're getting your makeup on, and then when you're dressing up, and then you're getting things out of your car, and then you're bringing them all like then, at a million points in this process.
Yeah.
No. And I restrain myself in making like monumental judgments about these people, but when at no point in the million times that they were getting ready to do this and planning it, obviously, did they not stop and think, this is racist?
Yes. Well, we have a higher level expectations of our own students. Do you know what I mean? So if our students did this, we would be super upset about it. But they are students. They're still, you're still learning. You're still, learning about appropriateness and kind of pushing the boundaries of things. If a student did this, I would be upset. But for an educators to do this in a kind of planned out process, and at no point did they ever say we shouldn't go down this path. And that's the part that I feel is the most disgusting of it. Is it we all do things that where at the moment you're like, it could. You make mistakes, but this is like ridiculous, over the top. And I mean, I know that they were suspended at least for the short term and until the investigation is complete and the superintendent apologized and all of these things. And I'm not blaming the school district, for whatever might be. I think it falls directly on those specific teachers that planned that out. And
the principal.
And the principal then is responsible to making sure that he makes the right decision as far as whether they're going to be terminated or not. And I hope that they are. I mean, actually, I would think that 100%. That would be almost grounds for the removal of your license. I think that's right on that verge of when we sign our licensure and we are saying we're going to always serve and protect our students, that kind of thing. You just blew that up, and so I wanted to make sure we talked about it, even though it's It's really, really hot kind of topic. But I think that that's exactly the right time to go ahead and say that this is not only appropriate, just disgusting, and that if you decide to go down this path, that this is not acceptable in the United States. I'm sorry, it isn't.
Be better, people. Be better.
Mm-hmm.
Be better than that.
Yes.
I'm like almost every time I open my mouth. Just be better, people. You can do it. You should be doing it. This is exactly the type of stuff that Donald Trump has given you license to do.
Yes.
And you're better than that. And don't take your cues from the racist in the Oval Office.
It leads right to our next topic about elections, though, Mike. Is how important those are, and really how important it is for us to make sure that we do know our candidate, really investigate them. And I think that there was plenty of information, and isn't like Donald Trump is somebody that is like, okay, he really wasn't that person before. We couldn't have predicted that this is where the path that we be headed down, basically the division of of our country, and making sure that we have divisive language and gross things that he says, and attacking different minority groups and ramping up the rhetoric. So where we have all of these shootings taking place, even inside of churches. It's not like we didn't already know that coming into this. You see what I mean? So when people voted for that because they said he's going to be a maverick, he's going to be someone outside the box, kind of that thing. That to me is like, no, you have all the signs of someone that is going to do the things that he's currently doing. You had those signs sitting right in front of you, and you had the evidence sitting right in front of you. And that's the path that's been going. So now on Tuesday, we have an ability, or at least to be able to put a check on what he's doing.
I'm so pumped.
Yes, and so I'm excited that a bunch of people already have put put their ballots in the mailboxes and have voted already in early voting. And I think Tuesday is going to be monumental as far as the number of people that go out and vote.
I heard a good quote from, I feel like it was either Matt Iglesias or Ezra Klein on the Weeds, said that it might have even been 538, their politics podcast. Either one of those, by the way, Ezra Klein show, the Weeds, great politics podcast, 538, awesome. They were talking about how the difference between the House, the chances of the Republicans holding the House and the chances of the Democrats taking the Senate are both about 15%. And they were reminding us that Donald Trump was predicted on the 538 polling average to have a 20% chance to win the election. And also that Thursday happens 15% of the time in a week. Like 15% is a Thursday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like it is not an insignificant amount. I don't think it's exactly 15%, but you get my point.
I totally get your point. Yes.
It's not an insignificant amount. It happens.
Yes, it does happen.
And it's the difference between O'Rourke winning Texas and losing Texas is the margin of error.
Yeah.
So
it really depends upon people going out there. Yeah. Getting out there, being able to go ahead and cast their vote. And then I was also seeing that it's so important for us to vote all the way through the ballot.
Yes.
Like I guess I've heard a lot of people just vote on the first few different, the top Senate seats or whatever it might be. And then they just turn in their ballot blank for the rest of the things. It's like, you really should do your research and make sure you vote for your local school boards, like we've talked about before, for your judges, for your sheriff, as far as in our local communities, and local state representatives, because they really do affect, especially the way that education is funded in the United States. Those representatives and their vision is what really is going to pave the way for what happens as far as school funding, and how do we decide as far as healthcare within the state of Minnesota or whatever state you actually go ahead and live in. Those local elections are super important.
It's funny, Florida has almost a singular chance at changing the course of democracy in the United States on a ballot initiative with
what is that one?
the felon voting.
Okay.
So there are 1.4. Florida has the most previously incarcerated people in the United States. 1.4 million people who were previously in jail for felonies have served their time. Some of them have gone on to do, have learned their lessons, do amazing things, and they cannot vote. You cannot vote if
Once
you have a felony.
That's so crazy, don't you think?
It's insane. And there's 1.4 million of them in Florida.
Wow.
And just that is an astounding number of people who are completely disenfranchised. So there's a ballot initiative in Florida for that to be repealed. And
that's huge.
It would change everything. And so, Florida, do a good job on Tuesday, please. And
they have some massive decisions to make with their governor's race and the Senate race that they have replacing there too. I mean, my goodness, it could be a completely different state by Tuesday evening.
100%. There are very few blowouts, guys. So all of these elections matter. The only real blowouts that are going to happen is it looks like Ocasio-Cortez in New York is going to win 79% of her vote, which is awesome.
Yes, that is awesome.
And I think Gavin Newsom in California is gonna win by a huge amount. But all these other races, I think I saw Stacey Abrams in Georgia is down by 0.8% or something like that.
That's crazy.
And there are the one in Ohio, the governor's race in Ohio is super close. Obviously, O'Rourke Cruz, turning Texas blue or at least partially blue would be a huge turning point in that state.
I found out he's from El Paso, Texas, dude.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's from my hometown.
So, I mean, America, Canada wants you to be awesome on Tuesday. Yeah. Please be awesome on Tuesday. Yeah. I'm really pumped. So I'll be watching all night. It'll be a late night, but I'll be excited and I'll be into it. And I'll be streaming it and stuff like that, I think, as well. So we'll watch it together if you want. We do have a small bit of news. Our friends at Teacher Gaming are struggling a little bit. We don't want to beat this into the ground a little bit, but there was an article that came up on EdSurge about them. This is something we've talked about a million times.
Yes,
making money in ed tech is not easy.
Super hard.
And just like so many other people, Teacher Gaming is struggling because especially the work that they do. I don't think people realize that making games is hard.
Oh God, yeah. So complex and so expensive too.
Right.
Yes.
And then you got to sell these things. You got to sell it, and not everyone's buying. And so they've had to lay off a few people, and they've got enough runway. They got enough money to get them through to September of next year. But we really hope that they're able to kind of keep going, because they're doing amazing work. We really believe in what they're doing, and hopefully they can keep it together, right?
Yeah, and I mean, big time that we've always been big supporters of them, not just because they became a sponsor of the podcast. We were supporters of them way beforehand, and their vision is amazing as far as how they're able to use really highly advanced game-based learning. So it's not just some cheesy kind of low-level learning. We're talking about advanced, high-level cooperative learning, and that has to do with games. And it's specifically bringing in commercial games and then using the aspects of those games in the classroom, which is super complex. But what they do is they make it super easy for teachers to go ahead and take that plunge into game-based learning by offering lesson plans and offering support to be able to make this happen. And then also offering that technical part where a lot of people don't want to mess with the technical part. They just want to press a button and then make it work. That's kind of what they've done. And so I'm giving them well wishes, and hopefully that they can go ahead and turn it around and then be able to come back huge.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. When we come back, we're going to chat about the big Apple event that happened a week or so ago. Stay tuned.
On Education is brought to you by Teacher Gaming. As a foreign language teacher, I'm so excited about Teacher Gaming's newest game edition called Influent. Influent is a video game aimed at inspiring people around the world to pick up a new language by making vocabulary acquisition and proper pronunciation a fun and rewarding experience. Players explore an interactive 3D environment filled with hundreds of collectible objects scattered throughout. I had so much fun playing this game, all while learning Korean. There are 18 languages currently supported, including Spanish, French, Mandarin, and even Bulgarian. To learn more about Teacher Gaming and all of the awesome games that are available, visit teachergaming.com. On Education is brought to you by Classcraft. Classcraft is an amazing teaching resource created by teachers. Classcraft is dedicated to making school relevant and engaging to all of our students. Classcraft is proud to announce their Questathon quests created with shared storylines and custom illustrations to bring any subject to life. Every time a teacher downloads one of the free quests, Classcraft will add $1 to the Teachers Are Professionals Fund, which will be used to fund teacher requests to pledgesense.com. To learn more about Classcraft, simply go to classcraft.com.
All right, welcome back to the show. We had a big Apple event about a week ago, and a bunch of new stuff was announced. New iPads, new Apple Pencil, new Mac Mini, which is fancy. Lots of cool new things. The new devices, Glenn, look amazing. They really do. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, you were saying that they, aesthetically look really awesome, that they've done a really good job with that. And then obviously I've looked through the specs of these, and they are on the highest end of laptops, or the iPad, as they talked about, had graphics similar to something you would get on an Xbox, so these super highly detailed graphics, and the visuals are amazing, man.
Oh, right. Yeah. New MacBook Air too.
Yes. And yeah, MacBook Air. Yes. And you said it's more like, you said it's more like a MacBook Pro, right?
It looks a lot like him. So it still has kind of that wedge kind of profile, shape, but it definitely, with the bezel being a lot smaller and black, as opposed to that giant silver bezel that you're literally staring at right now, which is incredibly ugly in hindsight, especially when you see the new ones. You go like, why wasn't that like that the whole time? So they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, the prices have went up a little bit, I guess. So now, that being said, I'm a big fan of the iPad Pro. I think it's an awesome device. I think if you need if your workflow can support using an iPad, you should totally use an iPad. I've kind of been, I think that, and I'm really close in my own personal workflow to being able to do that. There's not much that I probably couldn't do on an iPad, and so I think that these new iPads are awesome. 11-inch starts at $799 US, and then the 12.9 inches $999 US. I believe that these are the 64 gig models. Yeah. Bezel is a lot smaller on these ones too, so you're getting more screen, or the same amount of screen in a smaller smaller package. Form factor, physical size. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Which is great.
Yes.
Because I don't particularly like the big iPad Pro. I love the idea of having one of the kind of the normal, quote unquote, normal size iPad Pros. I would love to get one of those.
You know what I was thinking, Mike, is that we should have these companies, Apple and then Microsoft, send you their two products, and then you could do
I can really see who's winning.
Yeah, and then you could really go like and run a review. Sometimes you go on these review sites and you wonder, I think it's very specific to the business that you're doing. Like you always talk about, like, can you do your work within this, workflow? But for teachers, we have specific things that we use, whether it be your LMS for grading, whether it be you're managing all kinds of different apps at the exact same time, kind of wondering, working through those things. And which one, the Surface, if you had the Surface Pro, for example, or if you had the iPad Pro, which one would be the best, and then the best investment for a district to make for its teachers, for example, so that they can use those as tools, or even for their students if you were going to venture out into that $800 price range, which is pretty expensive. I mean, but that's how they come out, right? I mean, they usually go down in price. I mean, the initial cost is usually higher, and then eventually they come down in price to.
I would be surprised to see like your Black Friday's coming up soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be surprised to see the new iPad Pros.
Yeah, they're not going to go down.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see like the Air 2 or the old iPad Pros get discounted and that kind of stuff.
Pretty significantly, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. The new Apple Pencil is pretty sweet. You can charge it on the side of the iPad as opposed to that completely ridiculous way to charge the old one, which was to plug it in, yeah, to the side. I guess you have one now, so you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. Yes,
and then it sticks out. I was always terrified of breaking it.
Oh yeah, right? It looks nuts. I mean, it's like, really, you're gonna stick that thing in there? It's like, right. Wow, yeah, that looks insane. But it does. It's unique. I do like the idea of it charging somewhere.
The whole point of MagSafe was to avoid that, right? To avoid a hard plug sticking out of the device.
Yes.
Like they invented MagSafe so that you could literally, like, if you bumped into it, it just popped off.
Do you know if there's an adapter, Mike, like for just charging the iPad Pencil? I mean, but the old iPad Pencil. If you can just plug it into something that doesn't. Because that's so scary. I can imagine like students at a school, if that's the way you charge that, talk about that's gonna shatter.
A cord.
Okay, perfect. There is a cord kind of situation where you can plug it into.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have one somewhere.
Okay.
But yeah, you can plug it into the cord because it is ridiculous. It's so, I mean, this was kind of a no-brainer. The pencil is more. It's $130 now US. So probably $150 Canadian, which, I'll tell you, the Apple Pencil's amazing. It really is something. It's special. And I can't believe I'm talking about a stylus like that.
Oh, it's amazing. It's not just a stylus.
As soon as you use it,
yeah,
you're like, know. Whoa, this is a thing. Yeah. It is pretty amazing. So, a big fan of the Apple Pencil. I would still buy it at $129. If I got a new iPad, I would definitely still buy an Apple Pencil. I don't think you can buy an iPad Pro and not buy the Apple Pencil. It would be counterintuitive to me to do that. I don't think that the new Pencil works with the old so you have a new iPad, the first one that was not a Pro.
Yep.
But
it doesn't work with the new pen. The new Pencil doesn't work with it?
No.
That's weird. I mean, not that I care because I have the old Pencil now.
Right.
It's just funny that I'm talking about the old Pencil and it's like a new product, But what I was thinking about, Mike, is if these items are coming out and they have a little bit of a higher price range, then hopefully for schools, when we go into our next buying cycle, then the regular, what I call just a 1-year-old type of MacBook Air or the iPad Pros and the pencils, wouldn't that be amazing if they all went down in price, especially for school purchases? So it could be good. It could be good news. That's what my thought is.
Yeah, no, totally. I think what they need to do, I've been thinking about this a little bit because it's been a week and we had some conversations on Twitter and stuff like that. So I've had some time since then to think about it. And I really think that Apple needs to come out with an iPad mini
Yeah.
Basically, take that form factor,
Okay.
make it $249.
Ooh, that'd be a great price range. Love that.
Right. Make it
And it comes with a
$249.
pencil.
I don't think they could do that. But
Okay.
if they could make a mini at $249, I think that's right in the range of Chromebooks.
Yes. Very
It's
competitive.
it's more functional than a Chromebook at that point. It can do everything that you would need it to do. Like if you had same level of expectation as you have with a Chromebook, then you'd be really happy with an iPad mini at $249. I think that's a really good price. So I think right now their prices for the Mini 4 is $299. So what they need to do is they need to up the specs and they need to come out at $249. And then
maybe have a third party
offer a
pencil.
volume discount. Maybe offer a volume
Oh yeah,
discount.
yeah, for sure. For sure. And then I was
There is a
thinking about
third party pencil. Remember the
the
Logitech
crayon or something like
whatever.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they can come down to about $25,
Yeah.
then it makes like total sense for people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my goodness, you can write on it. It's like high quality writing, sensitivity. It's not just like a regular stylus. So yeah, that would be awesome. We need to talk to Apple.
Dude, clearly they're not. They're frustrating. I think I've said that before.
Frustrating, yes, especially this pricing is frustrating.
So I mean, really cool products. Probably the most extensive redesigns they've done in quite a while. You know, as someone that's complained frequently of their lack of reinvention or like creating something new. And I mean, I'm a big fan of iteration, but at some point you got to really bump it up a little bit. And I think they've kind of done that, especially with the iPads. The new iPads look great, and I'm really excited about the new MacBook. So I think that this was a good event. We
For
just
them?
we're still waiting, for them to come to education in some sort of stronger, more like, I mean,
a bigger push.
You can only sit on $1 trillion in the bank for so long, boys.
Yeah, you can invest that in education.
You could.
We'll be happy to help.
We would be happy to help. When we come back, we'll talk to, or Glenn, I guess, we'll talk to Josh Parker.
On Education is brought to you by Project Pals. Project-based learning has come a long way since poster boards and paper cutouts. Digital platforms like Project Pals have cut teacher prep time in half to allow more time for research and learning. They can either choose from the dozens of projects available in the catalog or create a tailored project from scratch. Project Pal's multi-purpose platform allows students to work in real time to create project assets, import media, and save their resources all in one place. Student contribution analytics and a progress bar keep teachers up to date. Solidly grounded in years of research, Project Pals is your all-in-one solution for student-centered inquiries and group projects. Welcome back, everyone. We're thrilled to have Josh Parker, former Maryland Teacher of the Year and now Director of Programs and Engagement at Unbound Ed, with us today. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great today. Josh, can we begin by telling our audience a bit about who you are, where you're located, and then what you do in education?
Sure. So I'm a part of an organization that is a virtual organization, but it's based in New York City. And our focus is on creating equitable practices in every classroom in the United States. And so we have a couple of signature programs, our Standards Institute, which happens in February, typically end of January, early February, and also in July, where educators from all over the country come and they're trained in how is it that I can reach all children, no matter where they come from, what their skin color, what their background, how can I reach all of them with the moves that make the difference in their learning? And so that's our signature program, but we also offer curriculum resources online. We also do individual site-based training to different school systems. And so that's our work. How can we equip principals, assistant principals, teachers, CAOs, superintendents throughout our country on creating the classrooms that our children of color deserve.
That is amazing. Now, are you based specifically in somewhere in the United States, or do you guys travel throughout the United States?
We typically travel throughout because it's a virtual company. My home, I live in Owings Mills, which is right outside of Baltimore, Maryland.
Awesome. Yeah. And Josh, I've read several of your articles, and I can't believe that I'm embarrassed to say that previous to this last week, I hadn't been reading any of your articles because they are so powerful and so much learning to actually, sometimes you read a blog article, it's, I don't want to be degrading, but it's like superficial. So it's like a very highlight layer, it's not any, there's not any details in there to how do I improve my practice? And I think that's the exact opposite of your articles. Like, for example, there's this article in Ed Week, which we're going to link in our show notes, and it's called Deconstructing Disruption in the Classroom. And I thought it was awesome, a fascinating take on classroom management. And in the article, you state there's a productive disruption and then there's a destructive disruption. Tell our audience a little bit more, how do you distinguish between those differences, and then why it's so important to do so as an equity move?
So it's really key, and I thank you for referencing those. It takes me a lot to write just one article, to be honest. And any person who writes, writing is such a task. And so I'm thankful that there are readers and I've gotten a lot of great responses since starting this blog a year ago. And I thank Education Week for helping me. So in regard to destructive disruption and productive disruption, I think the end has to be, what is the goal? So productive disruption, the goal is on the student's part, is for clarity, for understanding, and really for assistance.
Yes.
And so what ends up happening with productive disruption is it can look like the other type of disruption because it might entail someone shouting out or might entail someone getting up and talking to another student. It might be a situation where it sounds like it's disruption that will take us away from the goal of learning, but it really is advocacy. And so with destructive disruption, there really isn't a goal to finish the work or to get more understanding or assistance. It's really more for attention.
Sure.
Or it doesn't involve the teacher or learning at all. It's more of a side conversation that gets so loud that it distracts other people's attention. And so the main point of what makes destructive disruption different from productive is the goal. What is the goal of the disruption? And in the article, I really talk about this idea that learning in and of itself is disruptive.
It is.
Whenever you learn something, you're adding on to what you previously knew in a new way. And you're going to start thinking and most likely behaving in a different way. That is disruption in and of itself. And so I think when we normalize disruption is really important. And here's why that's an equity move.
Yeah.
What we know from the research is that everyone carries with them some level of bias in this country and in the world.
Sure.
Your bias comes from your upbringing, where you're from, what you've learned. And that tends to show up within schools and in classrooms, especially with students of color. And the reason we can assert that is because of the achievement gap itself, which we think is a provision gap. If the achievement gap, the gap between students of color and white students with achievement on state testing and other tests, if it was random, then that would make sense.
Yeah.
But it's predictably one on top, one not on top.
Yes.
And so because there's bias that enters into a classroom, how it shows up is how a teacher responds to students that are labeled disruptive. And so to be able to deconstruct that and understand what a student actually wants and not necessarily what you think they want based on what your bias might be is an equity move.
That's a huge move there in the classroom. And I read a couple of different other articles for you or about that you wrote. And one of them was called Breaking the Class Ceiling, and Teaching for Mastery and Enrichment. And in that one, you state, you said you wondered if the culture of instruction of Black and Brown students grow up in is significantly different than their peers.
Yeah.
And can you tell our audience more about this?
Yeah, that's a special blog to me. It also was recognized and awarded for one of the blogs of the month. And essentially, I went to a restaurant with my wife, and we saw it was a really special time for us, and it was a pretty expensive restaurant and great brunch, and we saw just lots of kids in there.
Yeah,
lots of kids that were babies there, and I'm like, this is a special event for me, but this is just normal for them.
This is where they go to. Yes,
right. And so I wondered if that's the case also when it comes to students.
Yes,
whether students of color are used to this extravagant, comprehensive, and meeting the needs educational classroom or not.
Yes,
because teaching matters. And the culture of a classroom really determines what type of learning goes on there and how students feel valued on. For me, I think about the type of instruction that I was blessed to be able to give to many of my students. So that when they came in the classroom, they knew that whoever the guy that was standing in front of them, that was me, was ready when the bell rang.
Yes.
Could meet all of their needs and would hold them to the highest expectations possible. And I wondered, is that what every student of color is able to say and grow up in? Just like those kids grew up in that type of elegance and that type of quality, do our students grow up in those type of classrooms? And I can say from visits in many states and many cities, unfortunately, that is not the case.
That's not the case. That is a fantastic point. And I mean, I commend you for all the work that you're doing. And one of the things I was reading, one of your speeches, and this is kind of in the same vein here, where you wrote in you said in one of your speeches that was hosted by the NEA, that we are the ones who can heal the broken futures that have been cracked by broken promises made to our Black and brown students.
That's right.
It's such a powerful and personal, moving speech. Can you tell us more about how we can heal the broken futures of our Black and brown students?
It starts by reflection, right? So, I wonder, and I read this somewhere, where people sometimes blame the community for the schools. Mm. Well, we actually might have to hold the schools responsible for the community, which is to say there is a dynamic link between what schools produce and what communities end up looking like.
Yes. And
so we have to start thinking reflectively. If when a kid comes through my classroom, if I'm a teacher, if they come through my school, if I'm a principal, and if they graduate through my school system as a superintendent, what should they all be prepared to do?
Yes.
Because when they come into those doors, the promise is that we will first be in loco parentis, which is to say we are the parents that are there.
Yes.
So we're supposed to nurture and raise them, but we're also the degreed and certificated adults who are supposed to have the knowledge to be able to teach them things that they need later. And so if we are the ones that can actually reflect on if we have held that promise, and if we haven't, then here are some things that we have to do.
Yeah.
Number one, we have to increase our capacity to deliver the type of instruction that will equip students to be their best selves.
Absolutely.
The second, we have to investigate where there is bias in us and how it shows up in what we do. Mm. Thirdly, we have to commit to having a learning orientation to the craft of teaching.
Absolutely.
Teaching is a craft. It is something that it's not just something that is abstract or all about love and kumbaya. It is a scientific craft where you understand from moment to moment what you can do to move 25 to 27 live bodies to understand something they didn't understand before. And so there's certainly art and joy, and there's lots of emotional qualities to education. But what about the craft of it?
Yes.
And I think that's really important.
I think one of the things that as I've been reading all your different articles, and I can see this connection between them. Like, for example, there's an article you write about the 4 components of an equitable classroom.
That's right.
And you talk about basically we have this overemphasis. I see this all the time in classroom management, where we want to control things in our classroom. So, and that control can actually stifle true academic growth.
That's right.
So tell our audience a little bit more about these components of an equitable classroom.
Right. I want to talk about that too. This idea of control, right? So I was listening in a speech recently, and this idea of, in one hand, if you look at it like a long balloon where you squeeze on one hand, sort of those car commercials where you squeeze on one end and it gets bigger the other end. Well, that's the same thing with control. You can't have complete control in a classroom and have growth at the same time. And what ends up happening, and this is especially with students of color, is that the teacher defaults to a command and conquer orientation versus a let's let go and grow orientation. And so one of the points of that article was to really investigate, is it a controlling atmosphere? And in that atmosphere, growth is going to be limited to the degree of control of the actual person, the teacher. Or is it going to be a growing atmosphere where that means it might look a little messy? You know, I always say when it comes to cooking, no mess, no meal. There's got to be some ingredients, got to be, some ingredients got to be met. There's got to be flour somewhere if you're going to make some cake. I've never seen it. If I see a neat kitchen, I'm not sure about the meal. That's all I'm going to say. So there's got to be some mess involved. You got to let kids learn and grow. Remember, we just talked in this, even in this talk, about the disruptive quality of learning.
Yes.
And so one of the focuses of that article was just to have people investigate the degree to which they are controlling what's going on in a room.
Yes. No, and so powerful what you're talking about here. I mean, and specifically for our Black and brown students.
Yeah.
In the same article, you described 3 actions to implement by your next lesson, which I think is, I love these kinds of action-based. There's something, an action plan at the end of the article, and it basically states you need to build a conversation protocol, compose exemplars, and integrate counter narratives into the content.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell our audience a little bit more about these action plans to be able to go ahead and create this kind of equitable classroom?
Absolutely. I want to first say too that this part of my blog, I typically bring up because I want this to be a grab and go blog.
Yes.
At times I will break from the protocol, and there will be speeches or guest bloggers. There'll be another guest blogger coming soon. But I really want people to take something from it and to do something literally tomorrow.
That's awesome.
And so when I talk about a conversation protocol, it's so interesting how we have in lots of classrooms students that are there and are ready to engage in conversation, but there's no protocol around academic conversation.
Yes.
Once you set up protocol around an academic conversation, you can allow students to continue to, again, grow. It's not about control, right? Give them the protocol because they have conversations all the time, but not necessarily academic ones. The other piece is composing your exemplars is this idea that, okay, I'm going to, as a teacher, go ahead and do the work and do the exemplars so I can lead them across that same place, because you can't lead someone intentionally to a place you haven't gone before.
Absolutely.
And I think that not only should teachers complete them, but the students, their exemplars, when they do great work, it should be used as a model for other students.
For sure.
In this way, we change the dynamic in the classroom, and we don't marginalize students, but we actually center them. And that's really, really important. And finally, I was in a school not too long ago, it was about a month ago, and I noticed that in every classroom, the content that they place in front of the children put African Americans in a victim position.
Yes.
And so what do you think goes through the mind of a student of color if in their English class, they're talking about, and listening to text that puts them as victims of atrocities? So there's got to be a counter narrative where it's not about what has happened to people of color throughout history, but how people of color have contributed despite that.
Yes.
And so there's got to be the counter narratives that you bring into your content that really help.
Now, do you see, Josh, as far as like textbook publishing companies, or are they making a movement towards that, or do we need
I think
to go?
some are.
Yeah, do we need to go out and seek out these resources and then make sure that we're, I'm talking about social studies classes or history or English courses where you're reading literature. We want to make sure that we're, like you just said, we're bringing in the stories of not just a one narrative, but like you just said, the multiple counter narratives that tell multiple stories of all these different cultures that make up our society.
I think more are.
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely true. At the same time, it's incumbent upon teachers to be able to certainly follow a quality standards aligned curriculum, but to be able to internalize the aim of that curriculum so much so that they can make choices that center traditionally marginalized people and cultures. And so, yes, I see more textbooks doing that, but there still is a need for teachers. Once they've done the work, they've internalized the lesson, they understand the standards, and they understand how text and how words can center or marginalize certain populations, to make executive decisions to put text in front of kids that shows them the breadth and depth of cultures.
That's awesome. Josh, thank you so much for joining us today. I really want to make sure we have you back because there's so many powerful conversations that we have. So hopefully we'll be able to connect with you again. And if our audience wants to connect with you, what is the best way to contact you?
So it's great to email me at joshparker1422@gmail.com, but I am most present and active on Twitter.
Yes.
And I am at MD, that's like medical doctor, also short for Maryland, at MD Toy 2012. MD Toy 2012 stands for Maryland Teacher of the Year 2012. So I look forward to tweeting with you and responding to you, because this is a journey that we can go into together.
Thanks so much, Josh.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad I was on here. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
On Education is an on-podcast media production. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. You can get in touch with us or ask us questions to answer on air by visiting our website, oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glen is at Irv Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. Our sound engineer is Jake Codeweiss. He's on Twitter at JK Radio. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we would be honored if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.